Please, please do not let me die here. I have to see my son, please.
Ma, we have you. Just breathe.
Doctor, female patient, early 50s, hypertensive crisis. BP is very bad. She's barely holding.
You look exactly like your father.
I know.
Sam, I am so sorry.
Tonight, I'm your doctor. That is all I can be tonight.
Mama! Mama, wait! Please, Mama, don't go! Please!
They said we had nothing. We had you, Papa.
The day Kemi walked out of that house, nobody shouted, nobody begged, nobody even cried, not right away. That is the thing about certain kinds of living. They are so quiet, you almost wonder if they happened at all. Almost. But the bucket was still there, dripping into the same old plastic basin, and 3 small boys were standing in a doorway, watching dust settle on an empty road. And a man in a wheelchair was sitting very still by the window, with his hands in his lap, not reaching, not calling after her, just watching. And that stillness, my friend, that stillness was louder than any shouting could ever be. The day Kemi walked out, she did not look back, not once. Not at the cracked wooden door hanging off its hinges, not at the plastic bucket sitting under the hole in the ceiling where rainwater dripped every night like a slow, patient clock. Not at her 3 boys standing in the doorway, Cole, who was 9, Jay, who was 7, and little Sam, who just turned 5 and still didn't fully understand why his mother was putting her best dress into a bag on a Tuesday morning. Not at her husband, Ade, sitting in his wheelchair by the window, his hands folded in his lap, watching her with eyes that had stopped begging and started simply recording. The way a man looks when he has already grieved something before it's gone. The way a man looks when he has been preparing for an ending his wife has not yet announced, but his bonds already know is coming. She did not look back at any of it. She walked out of that leaking roof shack in Abada's Agodi quarters, climbed into a black Toyota Land Cruiser that smelled of new leather and expensive cologne, and she did not look back. The man behind the wheel was Chief Remy Koka, 51 years old, 3 houses in Abuja, a hotel in Lagos, a smile that cost more than a day made in a year. He had been sending Kemi messages for 4 months. First it was small things, recharge cards, a new wrapper for church, then shoes, then the kind of attention that makes a woman feel for the first time in years that she's being seen. Chief Remy did not know about the 3 boys watching from the doorway. Or maybe he did and simply didn't care. The Land Cruiser pulled away. The dust rose and settled. Cole, who was 9, watched until the car disappeared around the bend of the street. Then he turned to his father. "Papa," he said quietly, "should we eat?" Ade looked at his son for a long moment. The bucket juked behind him. Sam was still standing at the door, watching the empty road, waiting for a car that would not return. "Yes," Ade said. His voice did not break. "Yes, we should eat." That was the last time anyone in that house mentioned Kemi's name for a very long time. Before we dive in, please do something for me. Tell me your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoy real stories like this. Now, let's get into this. Let me tell you what really happened to Kemi. Now, let me back up. Let me tell you who these people were before this moment, because a story like this cannot be understood from the ending. You have to understand the beginning to feel the full weight of what came after. Ade Bello was not always in a wheelchair. 3 years before Kemi left, he was the kind of man who carried things, timber, cement bags, the weight of a growing family on a carpenter's wage. He worked at a furniture workshop on the other side of Agodi, waking up at 5 in the morning, coming home at 8 at night, smelling of sawdust and wood varnish, and the particular exhaustion of a man who is trying. He was not rich, he had never been rich, but the boys were fed, the school fees were paid, sometimes late, sometimes in 2 installments, but they were paid. Cole's shoes had a small hole in the left sole, but Cole had learned to walk in a way that kept it off the ground. These were the negotiations of a family that was managing, not thriving, managing. The accident happened on a Wednesday in March, a truck with bad brakes on a steep hill. Ade was on his bicycle, coming home from delivering a cabinet to a client who had paid him half and promised the rest next week. The truck came down that hill like God was in a hurry. It did not stop. Ade went sideways into a gutter, and the back wheel of the truck clipped his lower spine with a sound he said later was not loud at all. He expected something louder, something that matched the damage. But damage, he would come to learn, does not always announce itself loudly. He woke up in a government hospital 3 days later. Kemi was beside his bed. Her eyes were red from crying or from not sleeping, he could not tell which. Cole, Jay and Sam were at a neighbor's house. The doctor, a tired man with a pen behind his ear, explained in the careful voice of someone delivering news he has delivered too many times, that the injury to Ade's spinal cord was severe. He would not walk again, not without extensive surgery that cost more money than Ade would see in 5 years of carpentry, not without rehabilitation that required time and equipment the family did not have access to. So, Ade said, wheelchair, for now. The doctor said in that way doctors say for now when they mean most likely forever, but I don't want to be responsible for your despair today. Kembi cried the whole way home. Ade did not cry, not then. He was busy calculating how to adjust the doorways, whether Cole was old enough to help him bathe, how to keep the workshop running by supervising from the wheelchair, whether the money from the half-paid cabinet delivery was still in his trouser pocket or lost in the accident. He was still calculating when Kemi started changing. It started the way these things always start, small, quiet, a little irritability that was understandable. Her load had doubled and she was tired. Fair. Then the complaints that were harder to argue with because they were all technically true. The roof was leaking, the money was short, the boys needed things. Everything she said was accurate. What changed was the tone. The way accuracy can be wielded as an accusation. The way this roof is leaking can be said to mean simply this roof is leaking, or can be said to mean you. You are the reason. You and your broken spine and your inability to climb up there and fix it. She started going out more, coming back later, wearing things Ade had not bought. He asked once, only once, where the yellow blouse came from. She said her friend Shade gave it to her. Ade looked at the blouse and at Kemi's face and at the way she held his gaze just half a second too long, and he filed it away. In the same place he filed the question of whether the left wheel of the wheelchair was going to need replacing before the month ended. He had too many things to manage. He chose the wheel. The day she left, she did not explain herself. She packed, she dressed, she said to no one in particular and to all 3 boys in specific, "Your father will take care of you." Then she picked up her bag and she walked through the door that was hanging off its hinges, and she did not look back. And the Land Cruiser pulled away, and the dust rose and settled. And Cole, who was 9, said to Papa, "Should we eat?" And Ade said, "Yes." And the bucket dripped. And the story, the real story, began. Grief in a house with 3 boys does not look like it looks in films. There's no slow music, there's no long staring at windows. Grief when you are 9 and 7 and 5 and your father cannot walk and there is school tomorrow and no one has cooked dinner looks like Cole standing on a plastic chair to reach the stove, burning the first pot of rice so completely that Jay opened the back window and said with great seriousness, "Cole, the rice is singing." Sam, from the corner where he was drawing on an old notebook, looked up and said, "Rice cannot sing." Jay looked at him. "This one can. It is singing goodbye." Ade, wheeling himself into the kitchen at the smell, looked at the blackened pot and at his 3 sons standing around it like mourners at a small funeral, and he laughed. He laughed until his shoulders shook and his eyes wetted, and Cole stared at him, uncertain whether to be relieved or offended that his cooking disaster was this funny. And then Jay started laughing, and then Sam, and for approximately 4 minutes in a smoke-filled kitchen with a ruined pot of rice, they forgot everything else. "Tomorrow," Ade said, wiping his eyes, "tomorrow I will teach you properly.
Tonight, bread and groundnut. Papa, Sam said, we don't have groundnut. We have bread, half loaf and dignity. Ade gravely said, that's enough for tonight. It was not enough, but it was something. And something in that season was everything. Ade rebuilt the family the way a man rebuilt a workshop after a fire. Not fast, not pretty at first. He found a church leader who ran a small micro-lending program for disabled workers. He borrowed enough to buy a small grinding machine, the kind used for pepper, tomatoes, the daily ingredients of Nigerian cooking. He set it up outside the house. He charged per cup. It was not glamorous. Women from the neighborhood would come with their tomatoes and peppers, and they would grind them. His wheelchair pulled up to the machine, his hands steady and practiced. Cole, Jay, and Sam took turns after school collecting payment, washing the machine, keeping the area clean. Their classmates walked past and saw this. Some said nothing, some said things. A boy named Femi, who had a father with a car and a mother who packed rice and chicken in his school lunch, passed one afternoon when Jay was cleaning the grinding machine and said loudly to nobody and everybody, "See the Bello family grinding pepper like house girls." Jay looked up from the machine. He was 12. His school uniform was clean because he washed it himself every night and pressed it with a hot iron heated on the gas stove.
His shoes were clean because he used a rag and polish every Sunday morning. Femi, Jai said, "How is your father's business?" Femi blinked. "Fine." "Good," Jai said. "By the time my family is done, your father's business will be greeting our business from a long distance. Now move, you are blocking the customer." The woman behind Femi, holding a bag of tomatoes, pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. She did not press hard enough. Cole, who had heard from inside the house, allowed himself one private smile, then went back to his textbook. He was preparing for his common entrance examination. He had decided, not with drama, not with announcement, but with the quiet, unshakable decision of someone who has thought about it carefully and concluded there is no other option. He was going to study medicine. Not because Sam had said it first, because Cole had been watching his father manage a disability with no proper medical support for 4 years, and he understood in his body, in his stomach, the particular helplessness of needing care you cannot afford. He was going to become a doctor. He was going to become the kind of doctor that people like his father could reach. The examination came. Cole sat in a room with 40 other children. He was the only one whose pencil case was a repurposed tin that once held tomato paste. He wrote for 3 hours. He came home. He told his father he thought he did well. I didn't know that I went back to the grinding machine. 6 weeks later, the result came. Cole had not only passed, he had the highest score in the district. Ade read the result later 3 times. Then he folded it carefully. Then he asked Cole to come sit beside him. They sat outside the house in the evening, the neighborhood moving around them, the grinding machine quiet for the day, the bucket, now a different bucket, the old one had finally rusted through, sitting in its corner inside. Ade said, "Cole, Papa, your mother." He stopped. Cole waited. "She did not know," Ade said, "what you are, what all 3 of you are. She did not know because she did not stay long enough to find out." He folded the result letter again, the way people fold things they want to keep. He looked at his son. "You understand what this score means? It means I can apply for the federal scholarship. It means you will apply for the federal scholarship and you will get it. And while you are there, I will not forget where I came from." "No, that is not what I was going to say." Ade looked at him. "While you are there, you will not carry where you came from as a weight. You will carry it as a reason. There is a difference. Weight slows you down. Reason makes you faster." He paused. "You understand?" Cole nodded slowly. "Yes, Papa." "Good. Now, come inside. Jai burnt the soup again." From inside, Jai's voice, "I did not burn it. I merely intensified the flavor." Sam, dry as dust. "The pot is black, Jai. That is called seasoning, Samuel." Cole stood up, folded his copy of the result letter, put it in his pocket and walked inside.
Behind him, the evening settled over Agodi quarters like a blanket. The grinding machine sat quiet. The single star peered through the hole in the roof. They had not fixed it yet. The money kept going elsewhere. And it stayed there like it always did. Patient, watching, waiting for what came next. What came next came slowly, then all at once, like most important things do. Cole got the scholarship. He went to the University of Ibadan College of Medicine at 17, carrying one bag, a tin pencil case, and folded result letter. Jai, who cried at the motor park and then denied crying, said, "I was not crying. I had something in both eyes simultaneously." Sam, who was 15 and already the most composed of the three, handed Cole a small piece of paper at the bus. He unfolded it on the road. It said, "Come back a doctor. I'll come back a surgeon. Jai will come back something loud and useful." Cole laughed for the first time in 3 days. Jai did come back something loud and useful. At 16, Jai discovered he had a gift for numbers the way some people discover they can sing, by accident, in public, with results that surprised everyone, including himself. His mathematics teacher, a strict woman named Mrs. Taiwo, who had been teaching for 23 years and had the energy of someone who had been teaching for 4, stopped him after class one afternoon and told him his solution to a problem she had set, a problem she had intended as a challenge for the class's best students, was not only correct, but used a method she had not seen before. "Where did you learn this?" she asked. "I thought of it," Jai said. She looked at him for a long moment. "Were you trying to show off?" "No, ma, it was just the shortest way." Mrs. Taiwo wrote a letter to the State Scholarship Board. The letter was 2 pages. The first page described Jai's mathematical ability. The second page described the family's circumstances, the wheelchair, the grinding machine, the 3 brothers studying by kerosene light. She handed the letter to Jai in a sealed envelope and said, "Give this to your father. Do not open it." Jai did not open it. This was, everyone agreed later, the most remarkable thing, because Jai opened everything. The state scholarship came through. Jai studied accounting and finance. Within 8 years of graduating, he would be managing investment portfolios for 3 different companies and building a fort of his own. Sam, the surgeon, not just a surgeon, the surgeon, the kind that other surgeons call when a case is difficult, the kind of young medical students read about in journals. Sam Bello, who had once said, "I think I want to be a doctor," with the same tone as requesting breakfast, completed his medical degree, his surgical residency, his specialization in cardiothoracic surgery, and by 31 was heading the surgical unit of a federal hospital in Abuja, repairing hearts that other hands had declared beyond repair. The 3 of them spoke every week, Sunday evenings, a video call that Ade joined from the sitting room of the house in Ibadan. A proper house now, rented, then later bought, the leaking roof shack on Agodi left behind in 2019 when Cole sent enough money home for the deposit for something solid. The grinding machine had retired. Ade did not need it anymore. He had retired it with some ceremony, told it "thank you," which Sam said was unnecessary and Jai said was completely necessary, and Cole said nothing, but took a picture of it before they stored it away. On these Sunday calls, they talked about everything. Cases, deals, Abuja traffic, whether Jai's new business partner was trustworthy, whether Cole's hospital canteen food was getting worse, whether Sam was eating properly, because Sam had the habit of operating for 6 hours and forgetting that his body needed things. They did not talk about Kemi. She was in the spaces between things, in the way Cole never referred to any woman as Mama, even when younger colleagues did. In the way Jai, for all his noise, became completely still and quiet whenever a story came up about a parent abandoning a child. That particular stillness that is not peace, but something that has learned to live alongside pain. In the way Sam kept a small photograph in his wallet, not of Kemi, but of the shack, just the exterior, the cracked door, the leaking roof visible from outside. He had taken it himself at 16 on a cheap camera before they left. When colleagues asked what it was, Sam said, "Where I came from." When they asked why he kept it, he said, "So I never mistake where I am for where I started." They did not talk about Kemi, but she was there. She was always there. The Emmanuel Specialist Hospital opened on a Thursday in April. It stood on Mercy Street in the new development district of Ibadan. 4 floors, white and grey, clean lines, a garden at the entrance with a small fountain that Jay had insisted on and called unnecessary, and Sam said it was fine as long as it did not take budget from the operating theatres. The fountain stayed. It was, even admitted quietly, quite good. The hospital had taken 3 years to plan and 18 months to build. It was the project goal proposed on a Sunday call 2 years prior, halfway through a conversation about Jay's portfolio returns and whether Sam should take a position at a private hospital in Lagos that was offering him significant money. Don't go to Lagos, Go said. The money, Sam started. Build with us, Go said. The 3 of us, here. There was a pause on the call. A hospital, Jay said slowly. A proper hospital. Specialist, not just general. Cardiothoracic, orthopedic, neurology. The things that people like Papa needed and couldn't reach. Another pause. How much? Jay asked, because Jay always went straight to the numbers. Gold told him. Jay was quiet for 7 seconds. He said, "It is possible. It will require..." And then they were off, the 3 of them, talking over each other the way they had argued over plates and burnt soup 30 years ago in a smoke-filled kitchen. Only now the currency was investment structures and land acquisition and hospital accreditation timelines. Ade, who had been sitting quietly on the call, said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "Name it after your grandfather, Emmanuel." They named it after their grandfather. Above the gate, they placed a bronze plaque. Gold's idea. Jay designed it. Sam approved it in 20 seconds, which was fast even for Sam. It read, Emmanuel Specialist Hospital, founded by Gold, Jay, and Sam Bello, in honor of Ade Bello, a father who never left. The day the plaque went up, Ade sat in his wheelchair in front of it for a long time. His sons stood around him. Nobody spoke. The fountain made its small, persistent sound. A bird landed on the hospital gate and immediately left, as if it had simply come to confirm something. Ade reached out and touched the plaque. His fingers found the words, "Who never left." He read them. He nodded once. "Okay," he said. "Okay." That was all. It was enough. Kemi came in on Tuesday. She did not come in through the front gate. She came in through the emergency entrance on the side of the building, brought in on a stretcher by 2 paramedics at 11:47 at night. Her blood pressure at a level that the admitting nurse later described as, "How is she conscious?" Her face grey, her lips pale, her body folded in on itself like something that had been fighting for a long time and recently stopped winning. She was 53 years old. She did not look 53. She looked older in the way that certain kinds of living age a person faster than the calendar does. The nurse took her details. Name, Kemi Koka. Age, 53. Next of kin, none provided. Medical history, hypertension, poorly managed. Current situation, hypertensive crisis with suspected cardiac involvement. The nurse flagged the file for the senior duty doctor. The senior duty doctor that night was Dr. Sam Bello. Sam walked into the emergency bay at 12 reading the charts. He was 32 years old. He was wearing scrubs and the particular expression of someone who has been awake for 9 hours and fully prepared to be awake for 9 more. He read the chart. He looked up. He stopped. The woman on the bed was grey and diminished and nothing like the woman who packed a bag on a Tuesday morning 23 years ago and walked through a broken door without looking back. Except that she was exactly like her, underneath the years and the damage, in the architecture of the face, in the line of the jaw. Sam stood very still for 4 seconds. Then he did his job. He approached the bed. He checked her vitals himself, methodically, his hands steady and practiced. He reviewed the paramedic's notes. He called for the specific medications. He spoke to the nurse in a measured clinical voice that his colleagues described as his surgery voice, calm and precise, and absolutely without panic, because panic in that room would cost someone their life. BP is critical. Get me the attending cardiologist, and I need a full cardiac workup in the next 20 minutes. Yes, sir. He stood over the bed and looked at the woman whose absence was the first and most formative fact of his life. Her eyes were open. She was conscious, barely, but conscious. Her lips moved. Sam, she whispered. He looked at her for one long moment. I need you to stay still, he said, gently, firmly. I need you to let me help you. She went still. And Sam Bello, 32 years old, cardiothoracic surgeon, son of a man who never left, child of a leaking roof and a grinding machine and a kerosene lamp and a piece of paper that said, "Come back, surgeon," began the work of keeping his mother alive. Down the corridor, the night moved forward. In the small security office at the front entrance, the guard at his desk was watching a phone video and did not notice the notification on the hospital's internal system, a flag that had just appeared on a newly admitted patient file. An automatic alert generated when certain staff names matched certain patient admission records. Nobody had seen it yet. Go's phone was on silent. Jay's was charging in the next room. And Sam was already inside the room, already walking, already refusing to let the woman who left them die in the hospital built in the name of the man she left behind. The fountain in the garden made its small, persistent sound. The bronze plaque caught the light from the security lamp above the gate. A father who never left. Inside, in the room at the end of the corridor, something enormous and unresolved and 23 years old was holding its breath, waiting to see what a son does when the woman who left him comes back in pieces, asking to be made whole.
Sam did not sleep that night. Not because the case was beyond him. The hypertensive crisis had responded to treatment within the first 40 minutes, the medications working the way good medicine works when administered correctly and fast. Her pressure had come down from the dangerous territory into something manageable. Her cardiac workup showed strain, but no infarction. She was stable by 2 a.m. Her color had returned to something closer to living. Her breathing had steadied into the rhythm of a person who had been pulled back from an edge they had not fully seen coming. Medically, Sam had done everything correctly. He stood outside her room at 2:37 a.m. and stared at the closed door and understood that medicine was the smallest part of what this night required. He had not told anyone. Not the nurse, who had noticed something flicker across Dr. Bello's face in the emergency bay and had filed it away in the private archive of things a good nurse observes and does not mention. Not the cardiologist he had called in, who had reviewed the case with professional efficiency and gone back to the on-call room. Not the ward administrator, who passed him in the corridor at 2 and said good night and received a nod in return. He had not called Cole. He had not called Che. He stood outside the door and breathed. Inside his chest, 2 things were happening simultaneously and with equal force. The first thing was the thing he had trained for, the clinical clarity, the assessment, the understanding that she was stable, that she would need monitoring, that the morning would bring medication adjustments and cardiology follow-up, and a conversation about lifestyle and chronic disease management that someone needed to have with her. The second thing had no clinical name. It was 23 years old, and it lived in the part of him that still, at 32, occasionally reached for something in a crowd, a particular kind of warmth, a particular presence,
and found nothing. The part that had learned so young to stop reaching. He had thought he had made peace with that part. He had built an entire architecture of purpose around that space, filled it with work and precision, and the particular satisfaction of repairing hearts that other hands had abandoned as irreparable. He had not, it turned out, made as much peace with it as he thought. He pushed the door open. The room was dim. The monitor beside her bed made its steady sound, a sound that Sam usually found reassuring, the mechanical confirmation of a heartbeat continuing. Tonight, it felt like something else, like a clock, like a countdown to a conversation he did not know how to begin. She was awake. She was lying still, the way patients lie when they have been told not to move, a kind of careful stillness, obedient and frightened. The IV line ran into her left arm, the blood pressure cuff sat ready on her right. Her face in the low light of the monitoring equipment was the face of a woman who had arrived somewhere she had been moving towards for a long time without knowing it was a destination. She turned her head when he came in. Her eyes found him immediately. "You are still here," she said. Her voice was weak but present. "I work here," Sam said. He pulled the chair beside her bed and sat. He did not check the monitor first, the way he would with any other patient. He just sat. She looked at him for a long time. "You look like your father," she said. Something passed through Sam's face. Brief, controlled. "I know." "His eyes," she said. He had very quiet eyes. Like he was always thinking something he decided not to say. "He learned that," Sam said. "It took him a while." She understood what he meant. She looked away at the ceiling. "I heard about the hospital," she said quietly. "I saw it in a newspaper. There was a photograph. All of you standing in front of the gate." She paused. Cole looked like he had more grey than a man at his age should have. "Cole worries," Sam said. "He always worried. You would know that if..." He stopped, restarted. "He's well. They're both well." "And your father?" "Papa is well." She closed her eyes briefly. "I was not in Ibadan when the hospital opened," she said. "I was in Port Harcourt then. I had been in Port Harcourt for 6 years." She opened her eyes. "I came back 4 months ago." "Why?" She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I had nowhere else to go." Sam absorbed this without expression. Chief Remy, and even saying the name seemed to cost her something. He kept me for 5 years. 5 years of big house and good food and overseas travel and all the things I thought I was owed by life. Her voice was flat, not bitter exactly, but emptied of the illusions that bitterness requires. She looked at the IV line in her arm. "After that, I managed," she said. "Various ways, various men. None of them worth describing." She paused. "By the time I was 45, I had understood what I had done. By 50, I understood fully. The difference between 45 and 50 is that at 45, you still think understanding changes something." "Doesn't it?" Sam asked. "Not the things that are already done," she said. They sat in silence for a moment. The monitor continued its steady testimony. "I did not come to the hospital because of you," she said then, and there was something important in the way she said it. A deliberate honesty, the kind that has been prepared. "I came because I was sick, and it was the closest specialist hospital, and I did not have the money for the private clinic on Adioyo Road. I did not know..." She stopped. "I did not plan this." "I know," Sam said. "I need you to know that," she said. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not here to reclaim anything. I know there is nothing to reclaim. I know that." Sam looked at her for a long time. At this woman who had been the first and most formative absence of his life. At the grey in her hair and the lines around her eyes and the frightened, careful stillness of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and no longer has the strength to pretend it is not heavy. He thought about his father. He thought about a cracked door hanging off its hinges, and a bucket in a corner, and 3 small boys, and one quiet man in a wheelchair who looked at the road his wife disappeared down, and then turned to his son and said, "Yes, we should eat." He thought about what his father had built from that moment forward, not with money, not with opportunity, but with the sheer refusal to become less than his sons needed him to be. He thought about what his father had told him once on a Sunday call, when Sam had asked him directly, "Papa, do you hate her?" Ade was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Hate requires energy I needed for other things. I chose to spend that energy on you boys. It was a better investment." Sam made a decision. "I am your attending physician," he said. "That is what I am tonight. What happens after tonight, that is not a medical question, and I cannot answer it tonight. But tonight, I'm your doctor, and you are going to sleep. And in the morning, your pressure will be rechecked, and the cardiologist will review your case, and we will discuss your ongoing management that someone needed to have with you." She stared at him. "That is all," she whispered. "That is all tonight," Sam said. "Sleep." He stood up. He checked the monitor, the automatic habit of a good doctor, even when the doctor is also his son. He adjusted the IV flow marginally. He wrote a note in her chart, then he walked to the door. "Sam." He stopped, did not turn. "I'm sorry," she said. Not dramatically, not with tears. Just the 2 words, plain and direct, the way the most important things are sometimes said. "I'm sorry. I've been sorry for a long time. I know it doesn't. I know there's not enough, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Sam stood at the door with his hand on the frame. For a moment, he was 32 years old and standing in a corridor of a hospital he had built. And simultaneously, he was 5 years old, standing in a doorway watching a car disappear into dust, waiting for a return that did not come. "I know," he said. He walked out. He went to the end of the corridor and stood by the window that looked out over the hospital garden. The fountain was lit from underneath. Jay's fountain. Jay's insisted upon entirely unnecessary fountain. And the water caught the light and turned it into something that moved. Sam took out his phone. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he called Cole. Picked on the 3rd ring. This was notable because Cole, who slept lightly in the way people who spent years being the first one awake sleep lightly, almost always picked on the 2nd ring. The 3rd ring meant he had seen the time, 3:14 in the morning, and had spent 1 ring deciding whether this was an emergency or something else. "Sam." His voice was alert immediately, no grogginess. What happened? It was not a question. Cole had a way of saying things that should be questions as statements, because in his experience, when someone called at 3 in the morning, the thing that had happened was already real, and the only task remaining was to understand it clearly.
Sam told him. He told him plainly, the way he delivered difficult news to families, not slowly to soften it, not quickly to get it over with, but at the pace of someone who respects the listener enough to give them the information in the order that makes it most possible to process. She had come in through emergency, hypertensive crisis. He had been on duty. She was stable now. She was in room 7. Cole did not speak for a long time. Sam could hear him breathing. He could hear, very faintly, the sound of Cole getting out of bed and moving across the floor of what he knew was Cole's apartment 3 streets from the hospital, close enough to be there in 8 minutes, when something required him, which things frequently did. "Did she know it was your hospital?" Cole asked, finally. "She said no." "Do you believe her?" Sam considered. "Yes." Another long pause. "Is she asking for anything?" "No. She said specifically that she is not here to ask for anything." Cole made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite something else. "She said that?" "She did." "And you believe that too?" "I believe she meant it when she said it," I said carefully. "I cannot speak to what she will mean in the morning." Cole was quiet again. Then,
How does she look? Sam hesitated. And in that hesitation, Cole heard the answer. That bad, Cole said. She is 53 and she looks older. Life has not been generous to her. After Remy, from what she said, it has been difficult. The hypertension is chronic and has been unmanaged for a long time. The cardiac strain is a consequence of that. If she had come in 3 hours later tonight, he let the sentence end where it was. Cole absorbed this. Has Jay known? You are the first call. Okay. Cole's voice had shifted into the register Sam recognized. Not Cole the brother, not Cole the son, but Cole the doctor. Cole the man who had spent his entire adult life making hard decisions quickly and living with them cleanly. I am coming in. Cole, it is 3 a.m. I am coming in again, Cole said, not loudly, simply. Call Jay. The line went quiet. Sam called Jay. Jay picked up immediately, which meant he was not asleep, which meant he was working, which was entirely in character for a man who treated sleep as a negotiable commitment and midnight as an acceptable time to review quarterly projections. Sam, talk to me. Sam told him. Jay's response was the opposite of Cole's. Where Cole went quiet, Jay went very still in a way that was audible. The absence of his usual motion, the cessation of the background sounds that always accompany Jay's phone calls, the shuffle of papers, the click of a keyboard, the specific sound of a man who is always doing 3 things going suddenly completely still. She is there, Jay said. Right now, in the hospital, room 7. Alive, stable, because of you. Sam said nothing. Jay exhaled. It was a long, slow exhale, the kind that carries a great deal of weight out with it. Okay, he said. Okay. Then, is Cole coming? He said yes. Then I am coming. Jay, you are in Lagos. I'll be there by 6. There's a 5 o'clock bus if I leave now, or I'll drive. I'll figure it out. A pause. Sam. Yes? You did the right thing tonight. Treating her, you did the right thing. Sam looked out at the fountain. I did my job. Same thing. In this family, it has always been the same thing. The line clicked. Cole arrived at 3:42. He did not go to room 7 first. He went to Sam. He found his younger brother in the garden beside the fountain, sitting in his scrubs. He looked exactly like he always looked after a long night, not tired exactly, but quietly used up in the way that precise, sustained effort uses a person. Cole sat beside him. They did not speak immediately. The fountain moved. The security lights made the garden amber. Above the gate, the bronze plaque caught the light. A father who never left. And Cole looked at it the way he often looked at it, the particular look of a man reading something he helped to write and still finds extraordinary. Cole asked Cole, how did you feel when you walked into that bay? Sam thought about this with the seriousness the question deserved. Like the floor moved, he said, for about 4 seconds. Then I checked her blood pressure and the floor stopped moving. Cole looked at him, something in his face, something that had been held tightly, loosened slightly. You are your father's son, he said. So are you. They sat with Lad for a moment. She told me she was sorry, Sam said. Cole's jaw tightened. She told you? Yes. And I told her to sleep. I did not know what else to say, Cole. I am 32 years old and I am a surgeon and I know how to repair a heart and I did not know what else to say. Cole was quiet for a moment. You said enough, he said finally. For tonight, you said enough. They stayed in the garden until the sky began to change color at the edges, the particular grey-blue of 4:30 in the morning that is not yet dawn but has already decided it is on the way. Then they went inside. Cole went to room 7. He stood outside the door for a long time, longer than Sam had. He was 34 years old. He was the eldest. He had been 9 when she left, old enough to have understood it completely in real time, without the protection of being too young to process it. He had watched her pack. He had watched her dress. He had watched the door. When the car disappeared, he turned to his father and said, Papa, should we eat? Because he had understood in that 9-year-old moment that his father needed someone to move the moment forward, and he was the only one old enough to do it. He had been moving moments forward ever since. He put his hand on the door. He pushed it open. She was asleep, or she had been. When the door opened, her eyes opened immediately. The light sleep of a sick person, easily disturbed. She turned her head toward the door and saw Cole standing in the frame, and her face did something complicated and difficult and entirely silent. Cole looked at her mother. Her mother looked at her son. He was taller than she had expected. She had seen photographs, the newspaper feature, a photograph someone had sent her once from the hospital opening. But photographs did not carry the particular quality of a person's physical presence, the weight they occupy in a room. Cole occupied his room the way Ade always occupied rooms, quietly, completely, without needing to announce it. He walked in and he sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair Sam had sat in. He looked at the monitor. Old habit, irrelevant really, but it gave his hands something to do. "Cole," she said. "I know." He looked at her. "Sam told me." She waited. "How are you feeling?" he asked. His voice was careful, clinical almost. "Better," she said. "My head is clearer. The pressure, the medications are working. By morning, the cardiologist will review and adjust if necessary." He paused. "You will need ongoing management. This was serious. If it had been later," he stopped. "It was serious." She nodded. They sat in silence. "You are angry," she said. Cole looked at her for a long moment. "I have been angry," he said. "For a long time I was angry. I am 34 years old and I have done a great deal of work on that anger because carrying it was slowing me down." He paused. "Tonight, I am mostly tired." "Cole, I do not need you to apologize tonight. Not harshly, quietly. I'm sure you are sorry. I can see that you are sorry. I am not saying the sorry is not real." He looked at her steadily. "But sorry does not give me back the year I was 9. It doesn't give Jay back 7. It doesn't give Sam back 5. It doesn't give my father back the 12 years of marriage he believed in. And the 3 years after that, he spent learning to manage pain we could not afford to properly treat because the money was not quite enough." His voice did not rise, did not crack. It was the monitored silence of a man who had every right to shout and yet chose to speak low. "So the story is yours. I am not going to take it from you and examine it tonight. Tonight, you are a patient in our hospital and you are going to get the best care we can provide because that is what we built this place for." She had tears running down the sides of her pillow, into the pillow. She was not making a sound, just the tears, quiet, steady. "In the morning," Cole said, "when Jay arrives, we will talk, all of us, together. There are things that need to be said, and some of them I cannot say without Jay present, because Jay will say the things I won't, and Sam will say the things Jay won't, and that is how we have always worked." He stood. He looked at the IV. He looked at the monitor. He looked at her mother's face, creased and grey and wet with tears, and his expression held something that was not warmth and not coldness, but the complicated territory between, the territory that only exists between people who are bound by something that cannot be undone, regardless of what was done. "Sleep," he said. "You are safe here." He walked to the door. "Cole." He stopped. "Your father," she said. Does he know I?" "No," Cole said. "Not yet." "Will you tell him?" Cole stood at the door. "Yes," he said. "When the time is right, yes, he deserves to know." He paused.
"He will not be cruel to you. He has never been capable of it, even when he had every right." She made a sound then, small and broken, the sound of someone who has received a kindness they understand they do not deserve. Kole walked out. He stood in the corridor and pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes and breathed, just breathed, in and out, the way you breathe when you have held something very heavy for a very long time and just put it down for a moment, not dropped it, not resolved it, just rested. Sam was at the end of the corridor.
Kole opened his eyes, looked at his brother and nodded once. Sam nodded back. They went to get coffee. Jay arrived at 6:22. He came through the main entrance in the grey morning light, pulling a small overnight bag, wearing the particular expression of a man who drove 4 hours through the night and whose body knew it, even if his face was refusing to acknowledge it. He found Kole and Sam in Kole's office on the second floor, 2 empty coffee cups on the desk between them. Jay looked at his brothers looked at Jay. Sam said, "She's in room 7. Jay set his bag down. He sat in the 3rd chair that Kole had already arranged, because Kole always arranged chairs for conversations that required everyone to be seated. Jay noted the chair placement and understood that Kole had been expecting him at this approximately time and had been sitting with Sam in this office, going through the mathematics of what came next. "How is she?" Jay asked. "Stable," Sam said. "Cardiologist reviews at 8. "How are you?" Jay asked. "Both of you." Kole said nothing. Sam said, "Ask me next week." Jay nodded. He understood the answer completely. "I need 10 minutes," he said. "Then I want to see her." Kole and Sam looked at each other. "Jay," Kole said carefully, "remember." "I remember everything," Jay said. His voice was even, measured. Not the Jay who once told a classmate his family's grinding machine was building an empire. Not the Jay who said, "I was not crying, I merely had something in both eyes simultaneously." A different, quieter Jay. The one that appeared in the center of things when the things were serious enough to require him. He paused. "Have I ever?" Kole and Sam considered. "Once," Sam said, "to that journalist in 2019 who asked you about your financial strategy." "That was not a mistake," Jay said. "That was a calculated statement delivered with deliberate force." "He cried, Jay." "He recovered." Kole almost smiled. Jay stood up. He picked up his bag. He straightened his shirt. He was 32 years old and he walked the way he had always walked, with the specific confidence of someone who had been told repeatedly in various ways throughout childhood that he would not amount to much, and had used every one of those predictions as a unit of fuel. He went to room 7. He stood in the doorway. Kemi was awake. The cardiologist had already done the morning check, a little early because Sam had asked, and her pressure was improved and her color was better, and she was sitting up slightly in the bed, which meant someone had adjusted the pillow, which meant Sam had been back in the room before Jay arrived. She saw Jay and went completely still. Jay looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked in and sat down. "You look like your father," she said. It was the same thing she had said to Sam, because they all did increasingly as they aged. The same eyes, the same particular stillness at the center of things. "I am told," Jay said. He looked at her without hostility and without warmth, with a kind of clear, uncluttered that, the same way he looked at balance sheets and investment proposals, seeing what was actually there. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to answer me honestly, because I am 32 years old and I have not seen you since I was 7, and I think I've earned honesty." She nodded. "When you left," Jay said, "that morning, when you were putting things in the bag, Kole made you a cup of tea. Do you remember?" She blinked. "He made you a cup of tea," Jay said, "because he thought if he did something for you, you would stay. He was 9 years old, and he thought that was how it worked, that if he was useful enough, useful in a small enough way, you would look at him and the calculation would change." He paused. "I watched him make it. He put in 2 spoons of sugar because he knew you liked 2 spoons. He brought it to you and you put it down on the table and you left." He paused again. "He never mentioned it, not once in 23 years, but I watched him make it." The room was very quiet. Kemi's face had collapsed entirely. She was not maintaining anything anymore, not composure, not dignity, not the careful stillness of a sick woman in a hospital bed. She was just a woman coming apart quietly in the face of the smallest, most specific truth. "I remember," she whispered. "Good," Jay said. His voice was not changed. "I needed you to remember. I needed you to know that we remember. All of it. Every particular thing." He leant forward slightly. "But I also need you to know something else." She looked at him through her tears. Jay said, "We are not defined by what you did. We are not a story about a woman who left. We are a story about a man who stayed. Our father is the story. This hospital, he gestured at the walls, the building around them, is his story. We are his story. What you did is not the story. It is the condition the story happened despite. He sat back. I needed you to know that. Because some people come back into a story and try to make themselves the center of it. And I needed to be clear with you before we have any other conversation. You are not the center of the story. You never were. She was weeping silently. Jay stood. Jay, she said. He stopped. The tea, she said. I knew what Collie was doing. I knew. Her voice broke on the words. I have thought about that cup of tea. She stopped, started again. I have thought about that cup of tea more than you will ever know. Jay stood at the door. For a moment, just a moment, something crossed his face that was not the clear, uncluttered regard. Something older and more complicated and more human. I believe you, he quietly said. He walked out. They called Ade at 9 a.m., all three of them on the call together, the Sunday call, but on a Wednesday, and with a weight to it that their Sunday calls, for all their substance, had never quite carried. Ade answered on the second ring. My sons, his voice was the same, the quiet, thoughtful voice of a man whose body had been taken from him by a truck on a Wednesday in March years ago and had rebuilt everything available to him from the wheelchair outward. 3 of you at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. What has happened? Collie told him. He told him the way Sam had told Collie, plainly at the pace of respect. She had come in through emergency. She was stable now. She was in room 7. Ade was silent for a very long time. The call stayed open. The 3 brothers waited in Collie's office, the empty coffee cups between them, the morning light coming through the window overlooking the garden where the fountain moved and the plaque caught the light. A father who never left. Ade had seen it many times. He had touched it on the day it went up, but he looked at it now as if reading it for the first time, with the specific attention of a man who is about to walk beneath it and needs to understand exactly what is meant today, in this particular context on this particular morning. His son stood beside him. Okay, Ade said. He wheeled himself through the gate. They took him to room 7. Collie knocked, pushed the door open, and then he stood aside. Ade wheeled himself in. Kemi saw him. She had been told he was coming. Sam had come in at 11 to tell her quietly to give her time to prepare whatever could be prepared for a moment that no preparation fully reaches. She nodded and said nothing, and spent the 30 minutes before his arrival looking at the ceiling with the expression of someone doing interior work that has no observable external form. Now she looked at him, and Ade looked at her. 23 years. He was in a wheelchair. She was in a hospital bed. They were both diminished by time in different ways for different reasons. And there was in the room the particular quality of 2 people seeing each other across a distance that is not only the distance of years, but the distance of all the choices that made the years what they were. Ade wheeled himself to the side of the bed. He looked at her for a long time. Her face, her grey hair, the IV line, the monitor, the way she was holding herself carefully, as if she might break, as if she was already partly broken and was managing the remainder with whatever she had left. He reached out and he took her hand. Kemi's face broke completely. Not a sound, just the breaking. The way a face breaks when it receives something it had entirely stopped expecting and therefore has no defenses prepared against. Ade, she whispered. Ade, I am so... I know, Ade said quietly and steadily without performance. I know, Kemi. You should hate me, she said. You have every reason. I had every reason, Ade said, for a long time. But hate is expensive and I had 3 boys to raise. Something in his eyes, not quite smile, not quite sadness, something that had lived alongside both. For so long, it had become its own thing. I could not afford it. She wept. He held her hand. Behind him, in the doorway, his 3 sons stood together. Ade looked at his sons over his shoulder. He looked at what he had built. Not the hospital. Though the hospital was extraordinary, though the plaque above the gate said everything, though the fountain in the garden was unnecessary and entirely right. Not the carriers, not the success, not the Sunday calls and the coffee cups and the 3 men who had become exactly what a man with a broken spine and a grinding machine and a kerosene lamp and an infinite stubborn refusal to become less than his sons needed had built them to become. He looked at his sons, and he saw in their faces, in Paul's careful grief, in Jay's pressed hand, in Sam's own held tears, the evidence of something that cannot be manufactured and cannot be compensated for or replicated by money or success or buildings with bronze plaques. He saw that they were good men. He saw that they were whole. And he understood in that room on that morning with his ex-wife's hand in his and his 3 sons in the doorway and 23 years of everything in the air between them all, that this was what the story had been moving toward all along. Not the mansion on a hill, not the triumph over mockery, not even the justice of a son's hand saving a mother who left. This room, this morning, these men. The bucket dripped, the star stayed, and the story, the real story, had always been about what a man passes to his children in the dark. Not money, not property, not the loud inheritable things. The refusal to stop, the choice to stay, the cup of tea made with 2 spoons of sugar by a 9-year-old who understood that love sometimes looks like usefulness, and sometimes that is enough, and sometimes it has to be. Ade looked at his sons. He said, "Come." They came, all 3 of them, into the room, around his father in his chair, and for a long time, nobody said anything, because everything had already been said by everything they had already done. Thank you so much for watching. What did this story teach you? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, the hands that were left behind are sometimes the only hands that know how to hold you when you come back broken. And the roof that leaked over your childhood may become the ceiling that shelters the whole world. What would you have done if you were Sam walking into that bay? If you were Cole standing at that door? If you were Ade taking her hand? Tell me in the comments. Some stories do not end. They just arrive at the place they were always going. This was one of them.